Welcome to another episode of NBA 2K20 Roster Edits. This one I'm pretty excited to talk about, and it's the all-time Golden State, San Francisco, Philadelphia Warriors team. For many that may not know, the Golden State Warriors used to be the San Francisco Warriors. Before that, they were called the Philadelphia Warriors before they moved cross-country to play in California. So, with that being said, I have 4 roster updates to this stock roster that I'm about to show you. And 4 of these players, 3 of them are NBA or Basketball Hall of Famers. Now, the 4 people that I am deleting from this roster are not Hall of Famers. And I'm not saying that one day maybe they will not be enshrined in the Naismith Hall of Fame, but as of me shooting this video, they are not, where these other 3 are. So with that being said, that's why they make the roster over the people that I'm going to be deleting. So let's take it back a few steps, a few years. We're going to introduce you to some really old school players, and we're going to hopefully enjoy this episode together. So let's jump right into it and look at the stock roster. Okay, the first one is Wilt Chamberlain, and this is a young Wilt Chamberlain, 25 years old. This is the one that scored 100 points in one game, so I think he makes the starting center quite easy to choose. The next is Steph Curry, the current point guard for the Warriors. Next is Kevin Durant, Rick Barry, and Chris Mullin. All 3 of them are listed as small forward, so we'll address that in a second. Next, we have Nate Thurmond, Hall of Famer, who played a long time with the Warriors, among some other teams. Shooting guard, small forward, Klay Thompson. Point guard, Hall of Famer, Tim Hardaway. Point guard, Baron Davis. Power forward, center, Draymond Green, who is currently a Golden State Warrior. Point guard, shooting guard, Sleepy Floyd. Shooting guard, small forward, Mitch Richmond, also a Hall of Famer. Jason Richardson. Purvis Short. And Andre Iguodala, who is an important part of the Warriors championship teams. So, with that being said, the individuals that I am deleting from this list, I'm starting in the back here with Andre. And Andre Iguodala would be the first off of the list to be deleted. The next off the list would be Jason Richardson, followed by Sleepy Floyd, and finally Baron Davis. Now, if you're looking at this screen just by itself, you see 3 point guards listed. When you have Steph Curry and Tim Hardaway as your point guards, you really don't need 2 more point guards on your team. So, with that being said, that's why the 2 of these guys get the axe. So, I'm going to add another point guard to this team. However, you may not know him. However, he is a Hall of Famer, but you will be greatly surprised to see some of the names, or maybe you're an old school basketball fan and you already know some of these guys. So stay with me, and we'll give you the roster updates. Alright, so to start, this is what we're looking at as our starting lineup. I have Steph Curry at point guard. That's a no-doubter. But this one might surprise you. I moved Chris Mullin to the shooting guard position in favor of Rick Barry at small forward and Kevin Durant at power forward. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be like, come on, those guys all play the same position. However, I do realize that. However, I feel that having Chris Mullin in the starting lineup is a necessity. If you're a bigger Klay Thompson fan, I guess you could go that route. However, I think it's important to have Rick Barry and Kevin Durant in the starting lineup. So, even though this is kind of a small power forward, it still fits well when you got Wilt the Stilt in the center position. And this is a young Wilt Chamberlain. As you can see, he's wearing a Philadelphia Warriors jersey. So that we're talking about the young Wilt Chamberlain. Although the in-game play doesn't really look like that guy, in my opinion. I think NBA 2K20 could do a better depiction of him. Because as you can see, he's very, tall and slender at that point in his career. where I feel like they just have the same body type for Wilt every year, despite his weight. So that's just my opinion. The sixth man, Klay Thompson, and again, you can change Mullin and him around if that's your preference. Backup power forward, Draymond Green. You also can play some center if you want to do some small ball. Nate Thurmond as your backup center. Tim Hardaway, of course, is your backup point guard, who's a Hall of Famer, so you can't go too wrong with Tim Hardaway as your backup point guard. And this is actually the first creation of the list, and this is small forward Tom Gola. And Gola was also a shooting guard, so this is the first replacement on the roster. Gola goes back to the Philadelphia Warriors days. He was a very good shooter for them. We're talking predated to the three-point line, so this is before the three-point line even existed. However, this is a great backup small forward coming off the bench when you have all three of these guys in the starting lineup. Now, of course, if they're not in your starting lineup, then Gola would probably jump down on the depth chart at small forward. Your 11th man, we talked about Mitch Richmond. This is a young Mitch Richmond. Mitch found higher success later on in his career when he moved on to Sacramento. However, when he was at Golden State, as you can see, he did average, 22 a game, 23.9 a game. Then he took his dealings to Sacramento and became one of the best Sacramento Kings of all time. So he is definitely a good backup shooting guard. The 12th man on the roster is another shooting guard, small forward, and this is Jeff Mullins, not to be confused with Chris Mullin, but Jeff Mullins was an integral part of the 1970s all the way up through the 1980s Warriors teams. He won a championship with them. Arguably, he could probably be considered a Hall of Famer. However, he is not in the Hall of Fame yet, but one could argue that with his numbers that he put up throughout his career, he could possibly get into the Naismith Hall of Fame someday. The 13th man on the roster is another throwback Philadelphia Warrior. This is Paul Arizin. Paul Arizin was a small forward, power forward type. He was a good rebounder during his era. He only stands about 6'4", so in today's game, that doesn't translate as well as it did back in the 1950s when he played. But he was a superstar for the Philadelphia Warriors for many, many years. He was one of their best in the franchise history until Wilt Chamberlain got there in the 1960s. The reserve on the list I left is Purvis short. Purvis had a pretty solid career with Golden State, as you can see. He was there for quite a number of years, and his numbers just kept getting better until he had a couple peak years in his career in the mid-80s. So I feel that he's a very solid small forward shooting guard backup. And again, this team's just loaded with small forward shooting guards. You have to make some concessions somewhere. And finally, the last guy that I put on this list is Attles, or Attles. I don't know how to say that correctly. But Attles was the point guard on the teams with Wilt Chamberlain. This was the guy that got the ball to Wilt Chamberlain. So he's a formidable reserve on this team. Again, I talked about how many point guards do you need when you have Tim Hardaway and Steph Curry. So I leave him on the reserve list to just round out this roster. Again, he's a Hall of Famer, so I had to put him on here to give him the recognition that he deserved over the other four guys that I deleted from this roster. So again, these are my 15 all-time Warriors, going back to the Philadelphia Warriors to the current Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. I hope you can agree with most of these. I do have some coaching recommendations. This shouldn't surprise you at all, as Steve Kerr is the head coach, being that he is the current head coach. So in addition to Steve Kerr, I actually made Attles the assistant coach. He was their coach in the 1970s. After his long tenured career as a player, he became a coach for some time in the 70s when they were very successful, the Warriors franchise. And he still, from what I understand to this day, works in the Warriors office in some capacity. So who better to have than a Hall of Famer, a guy that's been in the game for almost 50 years, sitting right next to one of the great coaches of our modern era on the bench coaching this team. So in closing, I hope you agree with my roster updates for the Warriors. Again, these are my choices. You can feel free to make your choices however you see fit, however you like to play. That's the fun of NBA 2K20. If you don't like a certain player on your team, you can always replace them with one of your favorites. Definitely check out down in the honorable mentions below some of the players that I did not include in this video that you may want to consider adding to your team. Thanks for watching, and tune in for the next episode. Thanks.